Tonight is an extra special, important show for me, and I really want to honor moms who, have to leave and go back to work after having their baby. It is one of the hardest things that I know that is out that you can do as a mom, is leave your child for the first time. And I know, like, after I had my first child, I remember being pregnant, and then I had it all planned out. I had my practice, and I needed to go back, like, just within weeks of delivering Jade, and it was very abstract and really not very real for me when I was pregnant. I thought, okay, all right, once I have the baby, a couple weeks later, I'll leave the baby home, my mom will come over, I'll go back to the store office, and I'll see patients, I'll come back, and it was all kind of, routine. And then I had her. And I don't know if you guys kind of went through the same thing with your first child, and you realize, oh my God, I can't leave. Like even leaving her with my mom or my mother-in-law was a really hard thing for me. Like not being there, you get so used to having them. Once you have your baby, you just can't imagine life without them. And then leaving and wondering what they're doing, and it was a really, really hard experience for me. And I know that it's more than just getting all the logistics down of how do I pump, and how much milk do I leave, and who do I choose to watch them. It's more than that. It's the emotional aspect of how do I deal with my emotions, and how does my baby deal with being separated from me. It's not from you. It's really not an easy thing. I know that. So I think it's an important topic, and I think with so many moms back in the workforce, we all have to deal with this. And I'll tell you, it doesn't even get that much easier. There are lots of times, even now, my children are older, they're 9 and 6 years old, and I still struggle with leaving them, saying goodbye every day, and working late nights and not being around all the time. And I think that we all want to have the best and do the best for our children. And so I have some really good tips for you, and some ways to help get over that guilty feeling of leaving and going away. And also, there's also the idea of maintaining your life as well. Recently I was very disappointed to read a blog post from another lactation consultant locally, who wrote about how she felt that people who were pumping and going back to work were selfish in some way. And I thought to myself, this is a lactation consultant talking about this. I was very, very disappointed to see it. I think we should be honoring mothers who are breastfeeding, continuing to pump, go back to work. She had said something about the idea that moms were going back to work to be able to pay for their expensive cars or their vacations. And I know that is not the truth. That is not the truth for the majority of working moms who are out there. We have lots of single moms, and we have lots of moms who are two salary households where just both salaries are required to pay the mortgage. Okay, so it is just not okay to judge anybody for what they do, and we honor the moms who pump and go back to work and breastfeed. So with that being said, let's play a little video. I had created a clip, and this was actually in my home that we filmed this, right, Taylor? It was awesome, sitting in my dining room and talking about going back to work and leaving your baby for the first time. Let's play it. Hi, I'm Sherry Creso, and I want to talk to you about something that's really personal to me, and that's returning to work once you've had your baby. It can be a really difficult emotional time for most moms. I know it was for me when I first left my child that first time. With so many women in the workforce, so many of you out there are going to be facing it or doing it right now, and so it is a topic that a lot of people want to know about. When you're pregnant, you think, okay, well, when I'm 6 weeks after the baby's born, I'll be able to just go back. You have all your plans set, because the baby seems really abstract. You don't really know how it's going to feel once you actually have your baby in your arms and it's time to leave. But once that baby comes, everything changes and the emotions can really run high. It's very hard to leave your child, especially in somebody else's hands, even if it's a personal friend, a family member, or even dad. So I wanted to give you some tips and ideas of what to think about, and really give yourself the space to go through all the emotions that you may be going through when it's that time to go back to work. It is a really emotional time, and you don't know that till you're actually a mom. A couple things I want you to keep in mind is, first, make sure that if you find yourself some really good childcare, whether it's a family member or a daycare center, it doesn't matter, as long as you feel really comfortable that when you leave your baby, they're in as good a hands as if you were with them yourself. Also, don't start on the first day of work. okay, that's going to be really hard for you. You're going to be thinking about your baby all day and you really can't focus on your job. What I would recommend is actually start your daycare a week before returning to work so that your baby's in daycare and you can be home dealing with whatever emotion you have to in your own personal space, okay? Another thing is, remember, there are lots of moms who are out there who are going through the same thing. So a support group, either in your area or even online, would be a great idea to be able to talk out all the issues, get tips from each other, and really get somebody who understands. Talking it out will help tremendously. Third, remember to make the most out of the time that you are home with your child. It's not the quantity that counts, it's the quality of the time that you spend with them. Your baby needs you as much as you need them. So spend time cuddling, being together, and if you're breastfeeding, make sure you breastfeed at the breast because they need it so much. Remember, you can have it all. This process, it's not either or. It's not either I'm a mom or I go back to work. It can be both. I've done it myself and so have so many other people. You could be a great mom, you could do the best thing that you can for your children, and you can still continue with that career that you worked so hard to build. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed that little video. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I mentioned in there. We talked about breastfeeding and pumping at work. If you're going back to work and you are pumping, and I got a lot of questions this week, tons. I don't even know how to go through all these questions in 1 hour. We have to do something to be able to answer some of these questions, but about how to pump, go back to work and make the most of it. Make sure that you're prepared. One thing that I see is that too many people wait till the last minute to start pumping, figuring it all out, and sometimes they wait a little bit too long to introduce their baby to a bottle. That is something that in my program, for a lot of you, I contradict a lot of what's out there. Most books and videos and whatever you hear out there from different experts, classes that you take, will talk about introducing your baby, waiting 4 to 6 weeks before introducing your baby to a bottle. For many of those babies, it's going to be too late, and they will reject the bottle, and that's going to make it really difficult for you to go back to work if you are pumping, because it's just going to make it a struggle, and it's going to make you feel bad to see your baby not taking the bottle easily, and the stress that adds to it. I encourage introducing it much earlier. In my program, I talk about when to do it, how to do it, and I don't have any clients who have any problems with that, where they're not able to breastfeed and still be able to give a bottle at the same time. So I think being prepared, getting started. Practice with your pump before you go back to work. Don't pull it out for the first time at your desk or when you're there, not wanting, trying to put it off as long as possible. Make sure that you know what you're doing. Make sure that you have all your parts prepared and you're packed and ready to go the night before. You don't want to be missing one little valve and then not be able to pump when you get there. So it's super important to be prepared. Build a little bit of a freezer stash, and not too much. I mean, I got people who are they've got extra freezers. They go and they're telling me they're buying an extra freezer for all the pump milk, and then they wind up with 3 or 4 breast infections. If that's you out there and you're and I had some questions and talking about, I've had 3 breast infections and what's it caused from, and my bras don't fit and this and that, and the problem is that they're getting very, very overly excited about pumping, and so you don't want to pump too much extra milk. Once you hit around that 6-week mark, I recommend pumping no more than 1 extra feeding per day. That means in a 24-hour period, no more than 1 extra feeding to what your baby's actually eating, to build up a little bit of a freezer stash. And that freezer stash is specifically for emergency use. I would not recommend that you use that on a regular basis. You're not freezing it to be used later. Pump enough in the first 6 months so you can stop breastfeeding and feed it in the second 6 months. That's not the way it works. Breast milk changes over time. You don't want to use old milk. You want to use fresh milk, and you just want to have enough so that if you had an emergency, if you spilled your milk from the whole day when you're out at work, that you can go back to it and pull some out of the freezer, okay? So not a huge freezer stash. Let's talk a little bit about what to look for in your child care, okay? Now this is also has to do with people who are not working. So if you're a mom and you're just gonna go out for a while, if you are gonna leave your child with anybody, okay, you wanna make sure that you're gonna leave your child with somebody that you are extremely comfortable with. Now sometimes that's a family member, sometimes that is a daycare center, sometimes it's a home care, somebody coming into your your home or a home daycare center. There's all kinds of ways that you can do this. But the most important thing is that you feel extremely comfortable with the person that's taking care of your child. A couple things I would make sure that I would do is if you are leaving your child in the care of like your parents, make sure that they're knowledgeable about CPR, infant CPR. And there's something that you can get from the American Heart Association that teaches you, and it has like a doll that blows up. I showed it in my class last week. We could show it next week on our or maybe I can do a link in the resource page to where you can purchase these infant CPR kits. It's a short video, and you can have your mom and dad sit down on the couch, watch the 20-minute video, and practice on the doll, and do it yourself too, so you can practice and keep up to date on infant CPR. That way you know that everybody's ready in case of an emergency, whether it's choking. I hear Joe running. He's running to go get it. Anyway, you can make sure that they're up to date. Very, very important. And the other thing too, and this was really interesting to, oh, here he comes. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so it's called Infant CPR Anytime, and it's from the American Heart Association, and you could go right online and you can find it and then purchase it, and I think it's like $35 or something, but it's totally worth it. It gives you all the information that you would need to do infant CPR and practice with the doll, you know, that you breathe into, and do chest compressions and all of that. Okay. Especially if you're going to have somebody staying at your home or being in the house, nannies. People are talking about nannies in the chat room here. I'll tell you the truth. You know, it's kind of, some things are good, some things bad about having an individual person in the house, especially with a baby that cannot speak. Remember, you have to make sure that you're very comfortable with the person that you're leaving your baby with. You know, there's no one else there except for the nanny. When you're using a daycare center, in some ways I find that to be a little bit safer in some ways. We have other people around, you have other teachers around, you have parents walking in and out. So keep that in mind, because sometimes people are so leery about leaving their baby in daycare, but when you find the right daycare center, it may actually be the right choice for you. And you know that there's a lot of people around in case of an emergency, or just to keep an eye on things. That was always my feeling, especially with my own kids when I started putting them in daycare. I think Jade went into daycare when she was about 18 months old for the first time, and she actually needed it. We had a nanny who was here with us at the store, and then after a certain point, she really needed that socialization, and she did great in school. I mean, she never looked back. She was 18 months old, and like, I stood there for 3 hours, I remember, watching her until the teacher finally said, "You can go now. She really doesn't need you." So I left and I cried, but you know, my daughter really enjoyed daycare. So, and they were in that same daycare for years and years and years. So another thing that has come up in the past too that was really helpful, that we never really thought about till we did our cloth diapering workshop, was if your child is using cloth diapers, can they be used in daycare? And the answer is yes. And especially here, I know in the state of New Jersey, it is protected. It is written into the law that they have to accept cloth diapers into the daycare center. So this question of whether or not, you know, I'm doing daycare, can I still cloth diaper? The answer is yes. And I don't know what it is in the other states, but I have to assume that it's very similar to leaving your breast milk, okay? I wouldn't walk in with just a pre-fold and say, here, you know, this is what I'm doing, and make it as easy as possible, make it the easiest diapers possible. And, you know, one thing about doing some cloth diapering at daycare is they come home with you, those diapers. So you know how often your baby's being changed, you know what they've done during the day, you know if they're hydrated, especially if they're breastfeeding. It's important. You know how you want to see that poop and you want to see that pee. It means something to you, right? It's telling you they got enough. And so cloth diapering in daycare is definitely a good option. It'll save you money and pay for the daycare, right? So there you go. You can save your money on diapers and it'll pay for your daycare. Okay. Getting enough sleep. Who's not getting enough sleep these days? I'm not. The puppy's keeping me awake. The puppy has been waking me up at 5:30 in the morning. I feel like I have a baby again. But yeah, getting enough sleep is a real issue, especially if you're going back to work. Not being able to sleep at night and then trying to be awake and have your wits about you during the day and working all day can be difficult. I know with my children, they didn't sleep through the night till they were much older. And it was hard. I think that sometimes co-sleeping or keeping your baby closer to you at night will serve a dual purpose. One is that you won't have to get out of bed. So if you're nursing, it may make it easier to have the baby right there with you, whether it's in a co-sleeper or with you in bed. And the other thing is, it'll give you that time to be snuggling and be with your baby. They miss you. And it could be one of the reasons why they're waking up more often, is that they're not with you during the day, so they want to cuddle and snuggle and breastfeed during the night. I think that it's important to make sure that you're getting your sleep, so try to figure out a way, whether it's taking turns, if you're not breastfeeding at night and the baby's just waking up a lot, taking turns with your hubby to get up, or have the baby sleep close to you. That's what worked for me. The other thing too is to remember that by the time a baby hits a certain age, sometimes that waking during the night has less to do with hunger and more to do with habit. And the more that you give into it, the more that they will wake. And I know with my second child, she was waking up so often during the night. I was really thinking she'll never, ever sleep through the night. And I remember just one night deciding when she was about 8 or 9 months old, okay, this is it. I'm going to let her cry, and I'm going to stand by the door, and I did my crying thing. And I thought it would take days and days and days. And every 5 minutes, I would just walk back in the room and give her a kiss and hug her, but not pick her up. And it was hard. Joe had to kind of hold me back from going in, and we let the stretch just stretch out a little bit longer. And would you know it, it took one night, and then the kid was sleeping through the night. And I could kick myself now. Remember, we were like, oh my God, if we had known this months ago, we would have done this. I want you to remember, you cannot do this with a small baby. It's because they actually need to eat. Okay, so I'm not recommending that you do this with a young baby, but once the baby gets to a point where they really are not waking up to eat, they're just waking up to be with you, and it's disrupting your sleep, and it's a problem for you, you may want to consider a little sleep training in there. They also need their sleep, okay? They need to learn, and you need to teach them how to sleep through the night. It's important. Okay. And one thing that will help them get better sleep at night, and we covered this on one of our other episodes, is actually getting good naps during the day. So make sure that wherever they are, in daycare, childcare, wherever they are, that they're getting good naps, that they're not overtired and cranky by the time you get them, okay? Because then they get the best of them and you get the worst of them, right? I've had that happen where they're happy as can be all day long, they're not sleeping, they're playing, and then as soon as they get home, that's when the crankiness starts. So unfortunately. And then last but not least, when it comes to leaving your child, is the most important thing is dealing with the emotional aspects of leaving. And that's the part where you can feel unprepared. You can feel very guilty. You can have mixed emotions. You can feel happy to have that freedom and that time to yourself. I know that it was always nice after I had my children, when I went back to work, to feel to feel normal again for a little while, to not be carrying that giant diaper bag, to have adult conversations. There was something to be said for having that time to myself, to get dressed, to put on my makeup, to feel good about it. And, I had worked so hard to build my career. It was not something I was prepared to give up. And I felt like, I knew I could have the best of both. I knew I could do both and get the right support. I think that's what it's all about, is making sure that you have the support in place and making sure that your child is adapting well to it. My children did really, really well in daycare, and so it always made me feel good. If you find that your child is not doing well, take a look at where you've left them, who's with them. And sometimes, you think it's going to be a family member that's going to be the best choice. And what I've seen with clients is that because it's a family member, because it's a sister or a sister-in-law or a mother, what's happening is they feel really guilty about telling them what they want them to do. Whereas if it was a stranger, like a nanny or a daycare center, you'd be very strict about this is how I want it, this is what I want for my child. And because it's a family member, you feel like you can't really say anything, you don't want to step on feet, you don't want to start arguments, they're doing you a favor. If that's happening to you, take a look at that, because it may be something that you want to shift. And I've had many clients who decided not to go the family route and actually go with the daycare centers, because they knew they were going to get what they wanted. Family members who were overfeeding their babies, giving too much in the bottle, not being able to keep up with the amount that the baby was eating during the day. Let's talk a little bit about that. Are we getting questions? That were you going to say something? I heard Joe.
I was talking about no positioners and bumpers, the AAP.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's move on to talking a little bit about some of the questions that came in here. I've gotten a lot of questions about pumping and how much a baby actually eats. And let's see. We have a question here. Something about what they're eating. They're asking. This is Catherine from North Carolina. Catherine's asking me how much of what we eat really goes to the baby through the breastfeeding. My daughter seems to have a problem when I take in a lot of dairy. And that was also another question that came in from someone else. She said my lactation consultant, and this is Julie from Pennsylvania, said her lactation consultant told her that it doesn't matter what foods you eat because it doesn't affect your breast milk. However, that she noticed that if she eats certain foods, like certain foods affect him, like pizza, peanut butter, and soy lattes. I'm guessing it was the dairy or the soy that triggered the next 2 days of hell. Great. My baby was fussy, gassy, grunting, pushing, shooting out liquid foamy diarrhea, and not sleeping well, and developed a diaper rash. What is the deal? That is truly the deal. What you eat does not really affect your baby in most cases, except for the dairy, okay? So for many babies, they cannot tolerate dairy, and even a little bit of dairy will affect them in very horrible ways, like a lot of gas, bloating, crying, fussiness, okay, and even green stool. And that was another part of the question that came in there, that the baby's stool was sometimes green and not yellow. If you're seeing that in your baby, usually one of two things are happening. Green stool is a sign of an irritation of the bowel, and that can happen either from an irritation from you eating a lot of dairy foods like cow's milk protein, and that going into the baby, or the baby getting too much of what we call foremilk, okay? This can happen from over pumping and not getting enough of the creamy milk, which is the hind milk. When you pump too much and you're over expressing milk and you're over producing milk, your baby's getting very watery, skim type milk that is very, very high in lactose. And without the fat there to digest it, it can have a very bad irritation on their bowel, and their poop can turn green, and they can get very, very gassy, all right? Keep this in mind when you're pumping so that you don't over pump, because you can be filling bottles of foremilk, which will then make your baby very, very gassy. And it's not usually the spicy foods that you eat or the beans or other things. It's usually the milk, okay? And drinking lactate is not going to help, okay? Because we're not talking about the sugar in the milk, which is the lactose. Breast milk has 10 times the amount of lactose in it than cow's milk, okay? So babies are typically not lactose intolerant. That's very, very uncommon for a baby to be lactose intolerant. Most of the time it is a protein, an issue with the milk protein, and that's why they have a hard time sometimes digesting the formula as well, because it's made with cow's milk, okay? So any kind of dairy. And if you're eating dairy, it can take anywhere up to 3 or even 3 days to a week for it to actually come out of your breast milk. So just don't go one day and then go, oh, see, it wasn't that, I didn't have the dairy. You actually have to let it come out of your system for quite a few days to really test it. Both of my children were completely dairy intolerant, and it was a real pain because I love my cheese and I couldn't have it the entire time that I was nursing, but it was worth it. It was totally worth it because I could tell the difference if I just had a little bit of dairy. They were screaming all night, they were uncomfortable, it was not worth it, and it would keep me up all night. And when you see your child uncomfortable, you make those changes. I had friends who would say, well, I could never do that, I would never be able to breastfeed if I couldn't have any dairy. And my answer was, well, that's the child that has to be breastfed, because what's the alternative? Going to some hypoallergenic stuff that is made with corn syrup. So it really is important to stick with it and just give up the dairy if you need to. This is from Cindy in Minnesota, and she said she's exclusively breastfeeding her 12-week-old, and he refuses a bottle if she pumps. Anyway, do you have any tips on preventing mastitis? I've had 2 bats of it within 3 months. Okay, the number one thing that I see that causes breast infections is improperly fit bras, okay? If your bra is not fitting you right, and for the majority of you out there, you are not fitting your bras right. I know, because I'm walking around the supermarket and I'm walking around Costco and I'm looking at people and I'm watching them walk into the store, and everybody's got the wrong bra on. Joe has to hold me back when we're out, because I'm like, I just want to walk up to people and be like, let me tell you your size, okay? Because your size is wrong. You're wearing the wrong size. Yeah, I see you, Christian, over there. You're right. Saggy, you know what, okay? If your breasts are sagging down and that bra strap is and that band in the back is riding up, you are wearing the wrong size, okay? And 90% of moms are wearing the wrong size. So let me tell you something. If you are wearing the wrong size, make sure that you're getting good fitted bras, because that is going to be the number one thing that causes plugged ducts, and that will lead to breast infections. And you do not want a breast infection. It is, 104 fever, 10 days of antibiotics. You get extremely sick. So that's the number one thing. The other thing is over pumping. Over pumping, leaving this engorgement going for too long. I had a mom not too long ago who came in because she had 5 breast infections in 3 months, and when I finally asked her, like, what is going on with you, she was telling me that she was pumping like 12 ounces of milk first thing in the morning. Every time she would feed the baby, she would put the pump on and drain the rest of her breast. Do not do this, okay? You only need enough to feed your baby. You don't need enough to feed the town, okay? Your breast will make as much milk as you make them make, and so they're just relying on you to tell them what you need. Over pumping, oversupply can be more of an issue than undersupply. So do not pump out all the rest of your milk and cause this issue and cause your breast infections, okay? The question was from Stacy in Iowa, and she said she has the flu. Oh, Stacy, can I pass it to my nursing baby? She said, I know this is a stupid question. Sorry. No, it is not a stupid question. It's a very valid, good question. And with the flu out there right now, let me tell you this. The worst thing you could possibly do if you're breastfeeding your baby and you get sick, is to stop breastfeeding. The minute you stop breastfeeding, your baby is completely exposed to everything that you have. So whether you have the flu, whether you have a stomach virus, whatever it is, you want to keep on breastfeeding right through that. In fact, the antibodies that your body is making to the exact virus that you have is actually made at the breast level. And the baby is actually getting those antibodies immediately to the actual illness that you have to prevent them from getting sick. I had one of the worst flus when I was nursing my first baby, and she was 3 months old, and Joe got really sick, and the two of us laid in bed with this baby for 2 days, and I kept thinking she is going to get this flu, and she never got sick. I just kept breastfeeding her. So if you have the flu, please continue to breastfeed. Just make sure that you're staying nice and hydrated. You need to drink a lot of water, stay hydrated, and you will not get sick, and your baby will not get sick. We've got a baby here to show you. Come here. He needs a haircut. He's going for a haircut tomorrow because his hair is getting really, really long. Oh, there he is. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Oh, that's my baby. Oh, Lucky. Say hi to everybody. Where's Lucky? Hi there. Hi there. This is my weaned baby. We're so weird. I know. We're really strange people, but get this. Oh, he's got my hair. He needs his nails clipped. He's getting his nails cut tomorrow. I don't know how to cut dogs now. That's scary. I'm afraid I'm going to do something to him. He's so little, too. He looks a lot. He's actually smaller than he looks even on camera. I've had people come in after seeing him on camera and be like, oh my God, he's even smaller than he looks. He's pretty tiny. He's only 2 pounds. So I just wanted to say good night to all of you. I love you all. And thank you to every single one of you moms for giving your babies the best health possible and being such good mommies and daddies out there. I love you. Mwah.